An ode to my black queer body. You've fought and you've run away. You've danced with other black queer bodies until sunrise. You've stumbled into saunas and been touched by hands with faces you don't remember. You've grown an afro that strangers touch without permission. You've grown dreadlocks and received special greetings from Rastafarians. When you grew your beard, strangers regarded you with even greater suspicion. You were asked if you were Muslim, and a colleague joked that you looked like a terrorist. You let a man masturbate you in the water as your family sunbathed in the beach unawares. You've done so much in secret, in parks and graveyards, in parked cars and moving trains, in toilets, in stairwells and garages. Sometimes you wanted to be caught, and sometimes you wanted to be held. You've had many sexually transmitted infections. You've taken PEP and PrEP so that you wouldn't get the one that many fear. You've been afraid of so many things, but mostly your own mind. Sometimes you think of stepping into traffic or jumping off a bridge. You've taken drugs for fun and to feel numb. You've been sober. You've been vegan and not vegan and vegan again. You've meditated for many hours, sometimes for 10 minutes a day, and sometimes for 10 days at a time on a silent retreat. You've retreated from your life in many ways. Sometimes depression has kept you from the world, and sometimes grief. You've kissed your grandfather's forehead after he was dead. You've held your nieces up to the sky to make them fly. You've given yourself wings. You've created an alter ego for yourself with a wig and heels. You've painted your face and nails. You've painted the walls of the home you live in with your boyfriend. You've looked at him with lust and with envy. In recent years, your waist size has gone up, your hairline has gone back, and there are grey hairs in your beard. Your boyfriend looks at you like you are so sexy, but you know you are so much more. With all that you've endured, you are nothing less than miraculous. And I like to read that because, I mean, it's the opening of the book and it's almost like the book in miniature. Like, so the themes explored in the book are kind of all of those things. Every sentence in that book has a whole section. Every sentence in that kind of piece has a whole section in the rest of the book. So I kind of expanded out from there. And that was commissioned by a magazine called Attitude magazine, which was actually the first gay magazine my mum bought me when I came out at 15, and they do every year an issue called the Body Issue, and they commissioned me one year to write my relationship to my body, and that was what came out. So that was just 500 words, and then, you know, when it came to writing the memoir, I used that as the kind of starting point to expand upon. And so the book is about 70,000 words, but the first draft of the book, I'll tell you this, was 170,000 words. So once I gave myself permission to write this kind of raw, unfiltered kind of version of events, I really went for it. I mean, the first person that got to read it was my mum, because I knew I'd be mentioning her a lot. And she actually contributed a lot of extra stories to this. She told me about things from my childhood that she hadn't told me when I was younger. So I got a more rounded view of my grandparents and her relationship to my dad and kind of how she was feeling as a teenage single mum. So I get to kind of like honor other generations, my grandparents, my mum, and get to understand their stories through sharing this with my mum, having the conversations with her about what I might be missing. It really helped me get a greater understanding of like, where I was coming from, not just kind of from my own experience, but the people that brought me up and made me the person I am. And one person that really helped me with this book was actually Lem Cisse. He gave me a lot of encouragement to kind of just tell my truth as well. He said, yes, talk to other people, but ultimately it's your story, and you're the one that kind of has to stand by this, and you're the one that needs to tell this story your way. Other people can tell their stories, and he's written an amazing memoir that's on the table over there, which I really recommend. My Name Is Why. And he's also published by Canongate, and I think that was having him as kind of someone I could call upon when I was struggling with it was really useful, because I did struggle, and I was in therapy during writing this book as well, because I knew it was going to bring up a lot, so I made sure I was seeing a therapist, and I also made sure that I showed the people that would be mentioned in the book a lot, to give them the right to remove things about themselves that they didn't want in there. So my boyfriend only asked for one paragraph to be removed, And I understood it was a bit sexual. And then one of my friends asked to be removed entirely, which was sad in a way. But I understood once it was done, it kind of made the story clearer because I was maybe hiding behind a bit of that relationship to tell the story. And actually, it is, like I say, my story to tell.
Thank you. You've named it Person Unlimited. Could you give us some background to the choice of that title? Were there many potential titles and you settled on that, or did it come straight away?
I think Person Unlimited was the kind of really inviting title that we kind of came upon. An ode to my black queer body was like where I started, and but I think making Person Unlimited the title and an ode to my black queer body the subtitle meant that, you know, the first thing you see probably when you look at this is Person Unlimited, and it means we're inviting anyone in to think of themselves and the unlimited version of themselves, because I think any of you could write an ode to yourself and look through the lens of your body and how it's carried you through life, and I think that's all I was trying to do. It happens that I am black and queer, and all the stories do relate to that, but I think they're relatable because they're specific, but they're also, you know, in a way, there's some universality to it. But I think the limiting factors that I wanted to feel unlimited from was like, you know, racism, homophobia, you know, the restraints of masculinity, like what it was like when I was younger, not fitting like in with the other boys, you know, being kind of mixed race as well, like, and being asked to, you know, are you black? Are you this? Are you that? Like, it was also, you know, what is it to be British and, you know, from another culture as well. So I was trying to explore all of those things, and I think as I kind of went through it, I figured out kind of the unlimited version of me, or at least the kind of expanded version of me. So that was kind of where the title came from, and kind of how it helped inform the writing of the book.
I know that you considered yourself a poet, first and foremost. How did that influence the structure of the text? And I asked this question because I was talking with, I think it was Malika Booker, and she was saying, everyone asks me about the sociology of my work, but I'm a writer, I have technique, you know? Yes. I want to talk about the technique. So I'm interested, and also I must confess that a writing group that I belong to have asked me to talk about structure, so I'll just steal everything you say, I'll just recycle to make it good.
The structure is essential for me. It helped me write the book, and it also helped me kind of frame my thoughts around how I was going to tell these stories, because if you're just going to write about your life, you know, you could pick many angles, many ways to write about your life. And so because I was writing about the body, and because I'd done a lot of meditation and yoga, I chose to move through 7 parts of the body. It's kind of like roughly using the chakras, but not specifically. I don't name them the chakras, but I kind of have crown is the first section of the book, sight, voice, heart, my left hand, because I'm left-handed, and that actually had a lot of stories related to it, belly, and then roots. And roots was, you know, the place where I get to the question, you know, we're always asked, where are you from? And that's when I actually go to Cyprus and Jamaica and explore my heritage, but also kind of very much the idea and concept of home. And at the time I was living in Scotland with my partner, but I was born and raised in London, and so it was also about kind of your home as maybe your loved ones, you know, the person that you want to make a home with. So that was kind of how the structure came about. Actually, when I'd written the first draft of the book, my editor was like, oh, well, the structure's helped you tell the stories, but now maybe we can give it a more conventional arc and narrative. And I was like, no, the structure is the book. Like, we are sticking with my 7 parts of the body, that is it. And I was very uncompromising on that. I compromised about some things, but like I was very sure about how I wanted the cover to be, and I was presented with covers I didn't like, and I was like, nope, we are changing that. And also with the structure and some of the editorial, I knew what I would kind of change, and I knew what I wouldn't change, and I really only was changing things if it meant protecting people that didn't want to be identified, or protecting myself from legal action, because there was a few things that a lawyer read it and was like, you could get sued if you published that. So those were the only reasons I would edit the book. It wasn't for kind of, and I also always had specifically actually like a black queer reader in mind, even though it can be read by anyone. I imagined like one of my friends, a poet called Keith Jarrett, like who's also black and queer with Jamaican heritage, and I thought Keith would get this, and anyone else can look things up if they don't get it. But yeah, I really did also, you know, turn to mentors and people for advice. Like Malika Booker's one of my mentors. She helped me more with my novel, The Black Flamingo. She was incredible when I was working on that book. But just being surrounded by other writers talking about structure, other people that have written memoirs, but also just reading a lot of memoirs. And there's a bibliography of some of the books I was reading and podcasts I was listening to at the back of the book, because I thought I like to show my working and show my inspirations. So I shout out lots of people there as well.
Thanks. I noticed in the book there's a movement. There's a passage where you talk about the movement between gay and queer. I wondered if you'd share that with us.
I will. I'd love to. So the context of this piece is I was at an exhibition where I had a portrait of myself taken by the photographer Ajamu X, who's an amazing black queer photographer, and he had done a portrait, or 25 portraits of young black LGBTQ plus people, and it was an exhibition at the Guildhall, and it said, you know, young black queer people, and my mum had come with me, and my mum was like, "Can you use the word queer?" She was really shocked, and so she hadn't really encountered the word used positively or the reclaimed version of the word. So that's kind of where that the context of where this is happening, and I'm saying to my mum, it's all about context, mummy. Not everyone in my generation or generations before me were comfortable using the word queer to describe themselves or anyone else. Queer has been used against some people as a slur. It still causes them pain and they don't wish to reclaim it. For others, queer is an unhelpful or unclear term, especially when used interchangeably with the acronyms LGBTQ+. But most of the time, for me, most of the time I feel gay, meaning of people, especially men, sexually attracted to people of the same sex. But at the best of times, I feel queer, making meaning outside of the boxes of gender and sexuality, not defined by a dictionary, defining myself from moment to moment, not a performance, but an authenticity of being that doesn't have a set aesthetic and doesn't place predefined roles on myself or anyone else. My queerness says thank you to Ajamu X and Bell Hooks. My queerness says fuck you to white supremacist capitalist patriarchy, but still wants its portraits in galleries and for you to buy my books. My queerness is a body of work, a body of knowledge, a body politic. My queerness sits at the intersections of race, class, gender, and sexuality. My queerness could be a game of spin the bottle, chess, or backgammon. My queerness is a child playing with a family heirloom. My queerness is an inheritance, but what I do with it will not be dictated by older or younger generations, biological or chosen family, friends, or even lovers. My queerness is a conversation, and you have the right to reply. My queerness believes in freedom of speech, but not freedom from consequence. My queerness is a consequence of oppression, and no, my queerness can't cure depression.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I like that line, queerness as conversation. And so at this point, we might return for one more reading, but before we do that, questions from the floor. Anybody got questions? Show yourselves forward, don't we shy? Owing to the anchoring of the mic, you may have to stretch a little. Thank you so much, Mars.
In the transition between being between being a poet and being a novelist, now being a memoirist, how do you decide for each project which medium you're going to be working in, and how does that medium affect the way you approach the story you're telling.
Thank you. Okay. Oh, is it crackling? Is that all right? Can you hear me? Okay. So I'm a poet first and foremost, I think. I think my first entry into writing was writing poetry. My first book that was published was a poetry book, and I think I love the instant kind of feedback that you get from poetry, and I love the poetry community and being a part of it. And I think in my fiction and in my non-fiction, I think the poetry comes through. I think you can see that it's written by a poet, and I think the way I see the world is poetry, and I think that's kind of the first thing. So when it comes to whether I'm writing a novel or whether I'm writing a poem, I think it depends how long you want to spend with the idea or how much you want to expand the idea. So some things I can write and it's a short poem and that kind of makes the point and it's done. And other things it just feels more expansive, and sometimes that might mean, is it a poetry collection or is it a novel? So with Black Flamingo, which is my second book and my first novel, I started writing Black Flamingo as a poetry collection. So it was a series of poems, and then eventually I was like, there's a through line here, and if I worked this in a different way, this could be a novel in verse. And so that's kind of how that came about. And with the memoir, it was, again, it was going to be a hybrid memoir, so there was going to be some poems and some prose, and my publisher wasn't keen on that bit, and I was already being quite uncompromising. So I decided where I was putting poems in, I just kind of flatten them out. And so you can't see the line, there's no line breaks, but there's still poems dotted around the book. So like they're in there by stealth. But also there were other poems that arose during the writing of this book that are forming my new collection, which is called I Don't March to That Drum. And that one I want to do more performative and work with a drummer and perform it with music. So for me, it's all about kind of what medium feels kind of right for kind of the idea and the sharing of the idea as well. For the memoir, it could have been like, some people are like, when I share some of the stories from the memoir, they're like, this could be a stage show, a one-man show. And I was like, I don't want to go on stage and traumatize myself with this memoir every night. But I was happy to put it in a book and go through that process and edit it and think about what I felt safe to share and what would be useful for the reader. But then, there's long stretches of time where I don't even look at this book because, there are parts of it that are still difficult for me. And so I think it's about how long you want to spend with it. The writing I do for young people, like I love writing children's books and novels in verse because I also love going into schools and libraries and sharing them with the kids and then hearing the responses from them. And that is really a big part of my practice going into schools. But I think when I wrote this, I was like, I need to write something for myself, something grown up, something that isn't about the kids, something that I can kind of write without censoring myself, because I'd written 3 novels in verse for young people. So I was always thinking about how it would be educational, how it could be used in the classroom, how it was going to help these young people at that specific point of their life in their teens. But life goes on beyond the teens, and actually some of the things that affect us as adults started in our teens and childhood. So we kind of got to, in this book, I kind of trace back, some of the things that happened in my 20s and 30s and where the seeds of those kind of traumas began, or where the kind of where I kind of learnt the things that I then kind of do in the book later on. So it was an explorative process, and I think just exploring any given idea and seeing which medium it wants to come out in is kind of the way I go with it.
I do agree. As someone who's written a memoir myself, I know there are parts of the memoir that I've written that I just cannot talk about in public if I read it. And I've noticed that all my friends also they ask me who've read the memoir, they ask me about the things that are kind of almost easy to ask about, but the difficult parts that I've written, the parts that I'm like, oh, I'm really vulnerable here. No one's yet asked a question about it. So I would agree that it's a form that allows the written word on page. I remember Cheryl Martin saying, that you can write something and then go away and leave people in their own time to read it and think about it, but you don't have to be present with them. Whereas when you're in theatre and you're kind of reliving something that is very difficult, it can be traumatizing, I guess. We'll take a couple more questions. This is now a two-part mic, so hold on to it.
Dean, so you talked about the bodies themed around, books themed around body. I was wondering, did you think about like the mind, or is the themes around body linked to the mind, if you know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think in terms of the mind, I think mental health is a theme throughout the book. That's something I explore, kind of depression, anxiety, and kind of like how I'd cope with that. But I also think I wanted to keep it very embodied. So when I talk about identity, it's through like the eyes of, eyes like is one theme I use. So like using sight and vision and how you see the world and how people see you. And within that, I include people like, one of my other mentors, Benjamin Zephaniah, and how him believing in me and encouraging me made me actually see myself as a poet who could, have something to say and be listened to and encouraged. And then voice is another theme of the book, and kind of finding your voice, using your voice. So yeah, I kind of try to be more visceral than cerebral, I think, because a book is already an exercise of the mind, so I'm describing these real life events to you, but I'm trying not to tell you necessarily what I was thinking at that time. I'm just showing you what I was doing, what other people were doing, and kind of like giving you a visceral experience, like you're actually in my body whilst we're going on this journey. So if that doesn't make you feel awkward, but it was fun. But yeah, mental health was something that I knew I was going to be writing about, as well as kind of sex and sexuality, and I knew I had to do it in a really unapologetic, unashamed way. But there is, a constant. The theme of shame comes up a lot, but I know that shame is something that was learned. I wasn't born ashamed. I picked that up when, I was discouraged from playing with a Barbie doll, or when people didn't, I wasn't playing football, or, I was hearing very homophobic things said in the barbershop or from other relatives, and the shame kind of gradually seeped its way into me, and I talk about it as if it was like ran through me like the words on a stick of Brighton rock, and I kind of had to find a way to dissolve that shame and get it out of me. And I think the writing process was the way I did that. So yeah, it was very much about the embodied experience more than kind of like pondering. It was more like, I'll show you what happened, and for some parts of it you can draw your own conclusions. There are times when I tell you how it is or how I want it to be seen, but a lot of the time I'm just showing you this. It's a more show don't tell kind of book.
Okay, we could take one more question. Throw yourselves forwards.
I'll just shout. Hi. I feel like mine is a comment, but I'm going to try and formulate it into a question. So I was just really interested the way that you were thinking about queerness in terms of fluidity, because I don't think I have. I kind of felt like I think of it as almost like a younger generation thing, or there's so many letters in the alphabet now we can't remember them all, so we just say queer as an umbrella. But I really like the way you were talking about it in terms of fluidity. And I'm also mixed heritage, and I think of that as quite fluid. Because I kind of buckle, don't like the term biracial, because I'm like, oh, I'm not only two, And so I suppose I think of that as more fluid, but I just wondered if you wanted to say something maybe about the fluidity in both of those.
Absolutely, thank you.
Okay.
You're my ideal reader. I think, I realised I was using terms interchangeably. So sometimes I'd say gay, and sometimes I'd say queer, sometimes I'd say mixed race, sometimes I'd say black. And, that's kind of gone on through my life. Like when I was very young, I said I was mixed race. Actually, before that, I said I was half caste until the John Agard poem woke me up. We kind of evolve our language, and sometimes these things come back around as well. But so I use mixed race, but I also use black in a kind of political way. And but that was challenged in some regards. When I was at university, I was involved in our African, Caribbean, and Asian society. So it was a really big group and a mix of people like we have here today. And some universities would just have an African Caribbean society, but we had an African Caribbean and Asian society. But some of my black friends would say, well, you're not black, you're mixed race, and that's different to being black. And that was how they saw it, but that's not how I saw myself. Like I saw myself as part of the black community, and especially when I was in that group, and when I became president of the of ACAS, it was interesting because suddenly a lot of queer people put their hands up and said I'm queer too, and they had kind of kept it on the down low until I was the president, because they saw, okay, everyone's accepted him, they voted him in, so it must be cool here to be queer. But that was interesting, because then I don't know, I think your queerness can be policed by the community as well, and what it means to be queer. And when people that aren't invisibly, gay relationships are calling themselves queer, people challenge them as well. And so it's been interesting for me to see how those terms get used, to great, good, but also they get used against people even within that same community. So I've definitely tried to show the more expansive way of using these terms and not limit myself. Okay.
Can we just not use the mic? 'Cause I think there's some sort of feedback on
Oh
it.
yeah, of course. Can you still hear me? Okay, good. I have lost my train of thought, but I think I answered your question.
Yeah.
Okay, great. One last question from me,
Yes.
and then perhaps we'll invite you to do a last reading.
Okay.
The question is, what advice would you give to writers who are starting out?
Oh my goodness, finding community is the main thing for me. Once I was in writing collectives or groups, I just felt like I was soaring, because I wouldn't know everything, but I could ask my pals, my other writers around me, and they would know someone that knew something or knew of an opportunity, or read my work. That was really, actually be interested in the work. Because your friends and family sometimes are not, and that's okay. They got other interests, but if you know other people that are writers, they can be the people that you send writing back and forth with, give feedback to, go along to events like this, or writing workshops with, or even set things up with. So for me, it's having a community of writers and reading a lot. I'm dyslexic, so I'm not the fastest reader. But I love reading, and I love audiobooks as well. So that is kind of one of my main access points into bigger books. I love reading poetry collections in print, but if it's a novel or a memoir or something like that, I'll probably get the audiobook if I don't need to see what it looks like on the page. That's kind of my way in. So if you like audiobooks and you like my voice, I narrate Person Unlimited. So you can get it that way. So yeah, that's probably it. Reading and being in community, because I think once you got those, ideas just come from life, just keeping your eyes and ears open, overheard conversations on the bus, playing with my nieces. I got ideas for my picture books, whatever, you're doing in life will probably make a good story, but don't stop living, don't just sit at home and not actually go out and live a full life. I think, when you're just having writer's block, go to an art gallery. There's so many free art galleries, aren't they? So when I don't know what to write, I'll go to an art gallery and I'll just kind of see how things kind of come in, or being in nature as well, just clears my mind. And then the ideas, unrelated ideas, kind of from the nature, but just other things just come in once I've got a bit of peace and quiet. And actually, the hardest place to kind of find ideas is sat at your desk. actually. So actually getting out, the ideas will come, and just then be ready with a notebook by your side always, or note it in your phone when something comes to you, because it might not come again. Sometimes they fly by, right? So those are my main bits of advice.
Brilliant, that's brilliant advice. Round applause to Dean. He's going to see us out with one last reading, perhaps, if we've got the time. I'm sure we have.
Yeah?
Maybe a short one.
Okay.
I like that idea of if you like the sound of my voice, go find my audio books. That's a brilliant pick, that one, you know. I'm sure they all do. They've been here engrossed by such thoughtful advice you've given, and such a lovely panorama of how you've developed as a writer and the Person Unlimited memoir. I'm doing this for the social media, you see. We're getting the summary onto the film. We'll put it out. And yeah, I know many of you here are writers. Some of you I know personally, some people I've met more recently. And I'm always inspired when I see somebody who's had this wave of success, such as Dean. And it's a mysterious thing coming to fruition. You can spend years and years, sometimes decades, crafting something, working on something, and wanting to be that. And then it kind of happens overnight, but you've been doing it for 10 years.
Yeah.
And it's a bit of a shock sometimes, isn't it? Oh, I'm in the limelight, everyone's looking at me, what's going on?
Yeah. Okay, I'll read from the beginning, because I think the other part I had marked isn't a good place to end, but it was a good reading, but not one to close on. So I'll close at the beginning. So it goes like this. Oh no, I'll stay.